Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Judge Hughes, and we are now on the record for a state of Maximilian v. Lampert Family Carnival. Are all parties for the plaintiff present and ready to go?
Yes, Your Honor, the plaintiff's here.
And defense?
Defense is here and ready to go.
Okay, everyone you need? All right, sounds good. Before we move to openings, are there any preliminary matters that anyone wants to attend to?
Yes, Your Honor, permission for the plaintiff to make appearances before the court.
Sure.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Neha Das, and today I'm joined by my co-counsel, Ms. Anaya Nelson. Good morning, Your Honor.
Morning.
And today we represent the plaintiff in today's case. May our witnesses also introduce themselves?
Sure.
Now, the plaintiff will be calling two witnesses to the stand. First, Mr. Utah Uden
Hi, good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
and Mr. Emery Everhart.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Would you like to hear introductions from the defense room?
Yes. If you have any other matters you want to address, let's get introductions first.
Yes.
So, defense, go ahead.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Morning.
My name is Ronnie Kane, and I'm joined by my co-counsel, Ms. Johnny Wynn. Good morning, Your Honor.
Morning.
And we represent the defendant in this case, the Lampert Family Carnival.
Okay.
Now, we're also going to be calling two witnesses to the stand, the first of which is Ms. Nick Snack.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
And the second, Professor Tempest Trapp.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning. All right. Any other preliminary matters?
Yes, Your Honor, a couple. First, we would like to invoke Rule 603, the constructive swearing in, and Rule 615, the constructive sequestration of all witnesses called in this case.
Okay, those rules are invoked.
Yes, Your Honor, and then we'd like to turn your attention to pretrial order number 1. I'll give you a moment to get there.
You can start kind of summing it up while I'm making my way back.
Of course, pretrial order number 1 is about a vicarious liability. It articulates that employees of the LFC are being held vicariously liable in today's case, and those employees would include Angel Ashmore and Nick Snack. All of their actions and statements leading up to the incident will be assumed by the defense in today's case.
Okay, is that your understanding of the pretrial order, or is there any nuances you want to point out or corrections you want to make?
Now, Your Honor, that's our understanding of Judge Rosenthal's wise words.
Sounds good.
With that, the plaintiff is ready to proceed.
Okay, any preliminary matters from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. If I could direct your attention to the case law first.
Okay.
It's going to be about the 6th page into that binder.
Okay, you can start summing it up while I get there.
Yes, Your Honor. There was a piece of precedent in here called Uchida v. Gwilt. And that case law says in a wrongful death case like this one, the defense can take on an affirmative defense to try to prove assumption of risk by a preponderance of the evidence. The defense will be electing to take on that affirmative defense in this case.
Okay, is that your understanding of the case law?
Yes, Your Honor, it is.
Okay, anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. Two more things. If I can point your attention back to the pretrial orders in this case.
Sure, go ahead.
This is going to be pretrial order number 5.
Okay.
Now, this pretrial ruling says that the expert testimony in this case, such as that from Tempest Trapp, the witness that the defense will be calling last in this case,
Okay.
that it's already been previously ruled by Judge Rosenthal that any 702 objections to their conclusions have been waived. Any foundation that they lay as to their qualifications, their method, the facts and data they relied upon is at their discretion, but it doesn't need to be laid for them to be qualified as an expert and for any of their conclusions to be admissible.
All right, is that your understanding of order number 5?
Yes, Your Honor, and we'd also like to note that order number 5 applies to Mr. Emery Everhart as well, which the plaintiff will be calling.
Okay, and I take it you agree with that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, anything else?
Last thing is on the stipulations.
Sure.
On page 1 of the stipulations, bottom stipulation, stipulation 8,
Okay.
says that both parties have waived all relevance objections and objections to Rule 403 to the two witnesses in this case, Nick Snack and Utah Uden.
Okay, that looks pretty clear. Okay.
Nothing further from the defense. We're ready for openings.
Okay, anything else?
And no, Your Honor, ready to proceed.
Okay, so we'll move on to opening statements. Of course, we start with the plaintiff. Counsel, you may proceed when you're ready.
Opposing counsel, Your Honor, and members of the jury. Debris as deadly as a bullet. It's July 14th at the Lampert Family Carnival. It's the final act. The audience is on the edge of their seat as magician Maximilian is being stared down by the barrel of a gun. Now, normally during this trick, the gun would be shot. There'd be a fancy explosion, but no deadly projectile. The magician would launch back, but get up victorious with a pre-planted bullet between their teeth. The audience would cheer. But that didn't happen on July 14th. Because this time, as Max was stared down by the barrel of a gun, he didn't know that there were shards of metal debris and dust about to take his life. That debris comes launching out of the gun towards him, knocks him back. He's bleeding. And finally, he dies. Today, you'll learn that the cause of Max's death was improper maintenance and due diligence with that property. As the plaintiff, it was our burden in today's case to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that LFC was reckless. And this recklessness was the direct and proximate cause of Max's death. We welcome that verdict. We are going to show you that the debris in that gun was as deadly as a bullet, and that debris directly caused Max's death. To do so, we'll call two witnesses to the stand. First, you'll hear from Mr. Utah Udden, an employee at LFC. He's going to tell you about a crucial interaction, a party, in fact, where drunken carnival employees were shooting the guns ablazing with real bullets, with no mention of cleaning in between or after or any sort of due diligence, leaving the door open for debris and metal shards to remain in that gun before the trick. Next, we'll call Mr. Emery Everhart to the stand, a firearm investigator, and he'll tell you that lack of due diligence in selecting the gun and improper cleaning and maintenance can cause deadly debris to remain in that gun. And when shot, it's no different than a real bullet. Mr. Everhart is going to explain how these elements of lacking of cleaning and care are deadly to any magician's trick. At the end of this trial, you're going to hear a story about lack of maintenance and recklessness on behalf of Lampert family. Don't let them get away with their cut corners. Because at the end of this trial, you'll see that these cut corners are the reason why Mr. Maximilian is no longer with us. Find the defendant live. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Defense, you may proceed with your opening whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Doss, members of the jury, may it please the court. They did everything right, and something still went wrong. When we get on a roller coaster, spend our vacation whitewater rafting, we know we're taking a risk. That's what makes it so thrilling. We know that 99 times out of 100, we can do something a little dangerous, and everything will be fine. But we always know that there's a chance we do everything right, and something still goes wrong. On July 14th, 2023, a magician named Maximilian looked straight down the barrel of a gun and told his assistant to pull the trigger. Members of the jury, not one witness today will tell you that wasn't risky. Not one witness will tell you it was a good idea for Mr. Maximilian to have a gun aimed directly at his head. When Miss Doss stood before you, she told you that everything that happened to Mr. Maximilian was my client's fault. She said if he had performed that trick anywhere but the Lampert family carnival, he'd still be here. But it's not that simple. You see, you're going to learn that when the Lampert Carnival hired Mr. Maximilian to perform, he told them, I've done that trick before. Hey, I know it's dangerous. I know it can go wrong even on the best of days. So even though it became Mr. Maximilian's job to perform that trick, you're going to hear that the carnival took precautions to try to protect him. My client did their job right, and something still went wrong. Members of the jury, everyone agrees that what happened on July 14th was a tragedy. This trial isn't just about loss. It's about liability. The plaintiff is bringing a wrongful death lawsuit against my client. They're saying that Mr. Maximilian passed away because the carnival was reckless, and they've taken on the burden to prove that. But when a performer stands on stage and does something dangerous, then our legal system says sometimes they assume the risks of their choices. So that's why we on the defense have taken on our own burden to prove two things to you. First, we'll prove that Mr. Maximilian consented to take on the risks that came with performing a dangerous trick. Second, we'll show you that he was aware of those risks. And we have to prove our case to you by a preponderance of the evidence. So at the end of this trial, if those two things are more likely than not, then the legal system says that our burden, it supersedes the plaintiff's. And you have to find the Lampert family carnival not liable. To prove our case to you, we're going to call two witnesses to the stand. Through their testimony, we'll show you everything that the carnival did right. And we'll show you that Mr. Maximilian chose to do a trick that he knew could go wrong. To tell you about everything the carnival did right, you're going to hear from another employee at the carnival, a performer named Nick Snack. You see, she worked at the carnival the same summer as Mr. Maximilian. And she'll tell you the carnival had an armorer to maintain his gun. She'll tell you that the day of the performance, she saw that armorer double check the ammunition. And to explain why the trick still went wrong, you're going to hear from an expert in performance safety named Professor Tempest Trepp. In the courtroom today, he's going to recreate the bullet catch trick for you. And he'll show you that when Mr. Maximilian did that trick, he took unnecessary risks. Members of the jury, I want to be clear. No one is blaming Mr. Maximilian for what happened to him on July 14th. Even though Professor Trapp will tell you he knew he was taking a chance, no one's saying he wanted a catastrophe. But just because you shouldn't blame Mr. Maximilian doesn't mean you can blame my client either. This knack will tell you that they tried to do everything right. And even Mr. Maximilian knew it could still go wrong. That's why at the end of this trial, we'll ask that you find the Lampert family carnival not liable. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, counsel. So as things were kind of worked out pre-trial, we're going to take a unique approach to witness testimony. So we're going to hear from a plaintiff witness and then a defense rebuttal witness, is my understanding. So plaintiff, do you have a witness you want to call or evidence to present?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the plaintiff calls Mr. Utah Audit to the stand.
Okay.
And before we begin our direct examination, Your Honor, we'd just like to point the court to a stipulation.
Okay.
It'll be stipulation, I believe, 14.
Okay.
Your Honor, stipulation 14 notes that both parties have waived all objections to exhibits 4, 5, and 7 and agree that no additional foundation is necessary before entering those exhibits into evidence. At this time, Your Honor, we move exhibits 4 and 5 into evidence.
Okay. Exhibits 4, 5, and 7 are admitted.
Yes, Your Honor.
May I proceed?
You may.
Good morning, sir.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Of course. Hi, how are you? I'm Utah, or Utah, like the state, I didn't like my last name.
Well, what do you do for a living?
I'm a past devil, present janitor, future janitorial manager.
Sir, where do you currently work?
I'm downtown over at the Verona Institute of Technology. You know, that big, beautiful campus with the greenery and the architecture and the campus center that looks like a castle. Yeah, so with the windowless brick building next door. I've been there for about a year. It's a fun gig, but a nice change of pace from my last job.
Well, what was your last job?
It was the whole daredevil thing. I used to work for Lambert Family Carnival. They call me the unbreakable item. I would do skydiving, shocks, explosions, skydiving, shock explosions, the usual stuff. I was there for about 4 years until the kid Maximilian passed away.
Mr. Arden, why are you testifying here in court today?
Oh, I'm here as part of a plea deal.
Sir, why'd you enter a plea?
I was street racing. A cop blocked me. I panicked and I crashed my Prius into a tree. When I woke up, I had a cast on my leg and I was being arrested for street racing and resisting arrest. I was looking at up to 10 years in jail. I mean, it was stupid. I'm just glad no one else got hurt.
Well, Mr. Arden, what are the conditions of that plea deal?
Well, I got to put on my best clothes. I'm talking to you lovely folks and tell you everything I know about the Lambert family company. If I do, I can get my charges dropped down to 10 months of probation. So I'm here.
Mr. Arden, do you know what might happen to that plea deal if you lie here in court today?
Yeah, if I don't tell the truth, then no more deal, no nothing. That's it.
All right, sir. Earlier, you mentioned a magician named Maximilian. I want to talk a bit more about him. Do you know when Max began working at the carnival?
I do. It was June of 2023. While my cast was in a leg, Miss Lambert, the owner of the carnival, needed someone to fill in. I remember she introduced him as Magic Max, and I was like, wow, I didn't know we had dances at the carnival. He wasn't doing that kind of magic.
Well, sir, what kind of magic did Max do?
Pulling rabbits out of hats, sawing people in half, the whole shebang. Ms. Lambert actually told me about one trick he was going to do on July 14th called the bullet catch.
Sir, what's the bullet catch?
Ms. Lambert put it as something that we needed to do. Essentially, Max's assistant would fire a gun at him, and then he would catch the bullet out of midair. Well, not really, though. The gun would be filled with blanks.
Well, sir, do you know if the bullet catch required any specific props?
Yeah, the gun and the blanks.
All right, sir, we talked a bit about Max. I want to talk about what the condition of the carnival was like while Max was working there. And based on what you saw, what was the carnival like?
Everything was falling apart. I mean, we had duct tape on the walls, duct tape on the props. You know, a substantial amount of the carnival was being held together by duct tape.
Well, what about that carnival's employees?
Honestly, man, what employees? People were getting fired left and right. In the span of a couple weeks, we lost both Donnie and Charlie to prop assistants. Real bad.
Well, sir, if you lost 2 of your prop assistants, do you know who was responsible for managing the props used in the bullet catch?
I do. At that point, we were down to 1 prop manager. That was Miss Angel Ashton.
Mr. Udden, in July of 2023, did you ever see Miss Ashmore with a gun?
I did, actually. It was July 13th, the night before Max's big bullet trick. There was this sort of happy hour thing going on at the carnival. So, you know, drinks, dancing, except for me, I was still the cast, but Angel was there.
When you saw Angel Ashmore that day, what was she doing?
She was drinking. Just knocking back beers. And then things got kind of dangerous.
Sir, what do you mean?
She pulled out a gun. She went into the prop tent, came back with this lockbox and some ammo, opened up the lockbox and gun.
Sir, after Angel Ashmore pulled a gun out of that lockbox, what happened?
She loaded the thing up, started passing it around, set up some of the empty beer bottles, and then everyone just started blasting. Like blam, 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 like that.
Sir, after people started blasting off that gun, what happened?
Well, I'm not really sure. I didn't see Angel clean the gun or nothing, or I don't remember seeing that.
Sir, in that binder in front of you, could you turn to Exhibit 5?
Sure thing. Is it in the front, the back?
It should be in the back, sir.
Sure thing. Got it.
Sir, have you seen that lockbox before?
Yeah, I have. But this is the lockbox I saw Angel taking the gun at.
Sir, after you saw Angel pulling the gun out of that box, did you ever see that lockbox again?
Yeah, I did. It was the next day, July 14th. Max and his assistant were setting up for a bullet trick. I remember seeing the same exact lockbox right there.
Sir, after you saw the same exact lockbox, what happened next?
Later that night, I was working at the ticket booth when I heard a gunshot and then screaming. I wasn't there when the trick happened, but I saw her video later. I watched Max get shot and killed. He was a nice kid. It was a real shame.
Thank you, Mr. Redden. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, counsel. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you may proceed when you're ready, counsel.
Good morning, Mr.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm quite well. Me and my cousin Becky, my cousin Donnie, we're gonna go out and maybe not hit the bar, but some mini golf. It's gonna be fun.
Happy to hear it, sir.
Thank you.
I'd like to talk a bit about why you're here today.
Of course.
On direct examination, you mentioned that you're here because of a plea deal, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Because you were illegally street racing.
I was street racing. That's correct.
And you mentioned a couple of the terms of that plea deal. You said you had to put on your nice clothes,
Yeah, I got my Sunday best on.
come to court today.
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
You had to tell the members of the jury your story.
Right. I have to tell you lovely people about what I know about the Lancer family. That's right.
All right, you mentioned that you have to tell the truth today.
Well, of course, ma'am. Yes.
But there's actually one more part of that agreement that you didn't mention, right?
How do you mean that?
Well, it's true that your testimony today, it has to be useful to the plaintiff's attorneys, isn't that right?
Oh, yeah. Useful, truthful. That's what they told me to talk about.
Right.
It is.
And it's not up to you to decide whether or not you told the members of the jury something useful today, is it?
I hope I'm telling you useful things. That'd be fine.
All right, but when it comes to your plea deal, it's not your decision, is it?
Oh, right. I think the attorneys would say, yeah, this is useful and this sounds like it's truthful and I hope I'm doing my job.
All right, today you understand that you need to make sure they find what you're saying useful, yes?
Yeah, I gotta be useful and I gotta be truthful, for sure.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit more about what it was like working before your accident.
All right,
You worked at the carnival, right?
I did, but I didn't be unbreakable. That was me.
Right, you would do tricks like you mentioned on direct examination.
Yeah, you know, the shock explosions, to clarify, no real shocks, but things like that.
You liked to keep your tricks a little dangerous, right?
Well, a little dangerous, sure. I mean, skydiving isn't exactly like mini golfing.
Several times, actually, you'd mentioned to the defendant you wanted your tricks to be more dangerous.
Yeah, a couple times.
But every time you were shut down.
Not every time, no.
But it's true that when your tricks would start to get too dangerous, the defendant would tell you, no, you can't do that.
Most of the time, yeah, but when I talked to Miss Lampert about the bullet catch trick, she didn't really say anything.
But when you would tell Miss Lampert that you wanted your tricks to be more dangerous, she told you no.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted a couple extra shocks in the explosion, and she said, no, I don't think that's a good idea.
Because you thought she wanted to keep you safe, right?
I would hope so, yeah.
You also mentioned on direct examination, you know about the bullet catch trick that Max was doing, right?
Yeah, I saw that video a bit more, yes.
It's true, you were at the carnival that night.
I was at the con, that's right.
But you've been at the carnival also throughout preparation for that trick, yes?
I mean, I've been there while Max was also at the carnival. I wasn't watching them every day or nothing, but I saw them prep that day, earlier that day.
Of course, you know that a lot of people at the carnival were talking about the trick.
Yeah, I've heard some, you know, this say, that say, hear that kind of say, yeah.
Right, employees were joking about how they wanted to try the trick too.
Yeah, it was a kind of a macabre joke about let's try the bullet catch trick. None of us are magicians.
But every time Mr. Maximilian heard those jokes, he turned them down, didn't he?
Yeah, he would be all like, I mean, everyone's got to take this trick seriously for it to go well. I mean, actually.
Right, he said, even with just a blank in that gun, it can be dangerous.
Yeah, he said that.
He wasn't finding those jokes funny, was he?
I don't think so. He was all like, we all got to take this thing seriously. Yeah.
Right, he said that to everyone in that room, he knew the trick could be dangerous. Yes.
Yeah, he said that.
Thank you, Mr. Udden. Thank you, Your Honor. I know.
All right, thank you, counsel. I'm actually not 100% clear on this jurisdiction's rules. Are we permitted redirects? All right, would you like to redirect this witness on anything?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Okay.
You have a minute 25, Council.
Thank you.
May I proceed?
You may.
Sir, I want to make a few things clear for the members of the jury.
All right.
When Angel Ashmore was shooting bullets out of that gun on July 13th, did you see Max there?
No. I remember seeing Miss Ashmore there, but I don't remember seeing Max.
Well, sir, did you ever get a chance to speak with Max about what happened that night?
No. When I saw him and his assistant prepping for the trick, I was just watching them, but then Miss Lampert actually told me to get back to the ticket book and start counting the tickets.
Thank you, sir. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel.
No recross, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Rudd, you are excused.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we will now hear from the defense and witnesses to call or evidence to present.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Nick Snacks to the stand.
Okay, Mrs. Max.
How might I sort of come, how do you want me to get into the?
You could just come right around
Okay,
here.
excuse me. All good, don't worry.
Good morning. Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hello, jury. I am Nick Snack.
What do you do for a living?
I work for a carnival as a little mentalist psychic lady.
What do you do as a psychic?
I tell fortunes, I predict the future, you know, I sort of tell people what they want to hear about their lives.
And what are you doing here today?
But the carnival that I work for is being sued, so I think I'm just here to sort of talk about what I know.
Do you know why they're being sued?
I do. One of our carnies passed away while doing a trick for us.
And which employee passed away?
His name was Maximilian.
Did you know what tricks he did?
Max, I mean, magicians are an interesting group. So Max would do, quite the crazy tricks. He would be underwater, he would saw people in half, crazy things.
Do you know how long Max had been working for the carnival?
Not long at all. He worked for us about 2-3 months. He started sort of earlier in the summer last year.
Do you know if when he started working for the carnival, he had to sign a contract?
Of course he did, yes,
Would you recognize that contract?
always.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I'm approaching opposing counsel with what's been admitted as exhibit 2.
The record will so reflect.
I may approach the witness with the same.
You may, any objections to the use of this document?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you.
So ma'am, what is this contract?
But this is the contract that Max signed. You see, the boss of the carnival wanted me to read it over for her.
Why does she want?
Speculation as to what the boss of the carnival wanted.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor, it's simply she's saying that she was asked to look over it. We can rephrase it in that way.
Okay, go ahead and do that. Once that's done, if you still have an objection, you can raise it.
Yes, Your Honor.
So why were you shown this contract?
I'm practically a lawyer. I mean, objection, sustained, jail. It's the best one there to read it.
Did you read over this contract?
Of course, I mean, it wasn't even very long. It was fantastic.
And what does it say?
Contract things, the usual. It will pay them. It says they understand that magic can be full of danger, which is so true. That's about it.
Do you know who was in charge of helping Max with his trip?
But we had a little man, and his name was Angel. And Angel was sort of the proppy guy, so he would help all of us get our things.
How do you know he was working with Max?
But I saw him, out and about rummaging. We would talk about what he was getting for Maximilian, things like that.
I'd like to talk about the bullet catch trick specifically. Do you know if Angel was helping Max with that trick?
It was, yes. The bullet catch trick, it's sort of, gets shot in the face, basically. So Angel was in charge of getting the bullets and the flakes. I saw him with those things.
Did you ever see him maintaining them or cleaning them?
Absolutely. I mean, Angel was taking this very seriously, which made it hard to hang out with him. But I would see him check the ammo, things like that.
What do you mean it made it hard to hang out?
I like to have fun. But when Angel was worrying about the trick, Angel wouldn't hang out with me, wouldn't party with me. It was very sad. I had to hang out with the weird carnies.
Oh man, what about Max? Did you ever get the chance to talk to him about this trick?
Max and I, we only ever spoke once. I do try and distance myself from magicians.
Let's talk about that time you spoke to him. When was it?
Well, I was at the shooting range, just like to keep my skills sharp when I ran into him.
Did you talk to him?
Of course, I mean, at first I thought I might be in danger, an armed magician coming up to me. Luckily, he was just there to also practice.
What did you and Max talk about?
We talked about guns. I learned he grew up with guns. I learned a lot about his childhood. I asked if he ever, wanted to mix guns and magic. Not want to mix guns and magic.
What do you mean he didn't want to mix guns and magic?
Well, I mean, he told me, he said, guns are very dangerous and, you don't want to point a gun at something you don't want dead.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
All right, thank you, counsel.
Cross-examination, Your Honor.
Yes, you may proceed when you're ready.
Good morning. My name is Kiara Moon. I'm gonna ask you some questions on behalf.
Hello, Miss Moon.
I want to start by talking about where you just left off. Because you mentioned a conversation you had with Max at a shooting range, right?
That's right.
And I want to be clear. When you claim you had that conversation with Max, there was no one else around, right?
I was there. Max was there. I mean, the spirits, of course, but that was it.
Well, and other than the spirits, there was no one else around, right?
That's right.
And when you claim to have had that conversation, to the best of your knowledge, there's no security camera footage showing you two talking.
I hope people are filming me now.
And to the best of your knowledge, there's no security camera footage of you entering that building at all.
I wouldn't know.
Ma'am, to the best of your knowledge, the only person claiming that that conversation happened is you.
That's right. I'm telling you about it.
Well, I want to talk about whether or not we can trust what you're saying. Because you'd say that you're a fantastic performer, right?
Thank you. I would say that, yes.
And you actually think that fantastic performers, well, they make fantastic liars.
You see, you must. A lot of men, they come to me, they say, will I find love? And I look at them in my head, I think, probably not. But I want to, be reassuring, give them inspiration. So I tell the little freaks, don't worry, she's coming for you. So yes.
Man, you think you're a master at psychological manipulation.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
You're not just a master at manipulating people, you learn to get pretty good at stretching the truth.
Yes, again, freaks are coming to me. I'm giving them hope.
Man, you learn how to look at a group of people like the members of this jury and read them, right?
That's right, but don't worry, jury, you're safe.
You analyze people's subconscious reactions.
I do.
And then you use that information to tell them what they want to hear.
Exactly.
Well, I want to talk about why you might be testifying in today's trial. Ma'am, you worked for the carnival your entire career.
That's right.
You worked for them for 10 years.
I have.
It said you owe all of your success to that carnival.
Absolutely. I mean, they gave me my tent.
Ma'am, you want to pay them back for all that success, right?
Absolutely.
But you'd say that the only real threat to this carnival, well, it's this lawsuit.
That's right. I mean, we're a great carnival. We have so many fun tricks and people.
Yeah, that's a yes, my question. The threat to the carnival is this lawsuit.
That's right.
You'd say that this lawsuit, well, it's dragging the carnival's name through the mud.
It's dragging my name through the mud. I'll
That's
tell you
right,
that
ma'am.
much.
It's not just the carnival, it's your reputation too.
Exactly. I was going to be on SNL. Not anymore, and I can't think of any other reason why.
Yeah. You've had SNL appearances, you've had talk show appearances, they've all been canceled because of this lawsuit.
This lawsuit, exactly.
You're hoping that if the carnival is found not liable in today's lawsuit, well, then your career can go back to normal.
I would hope. It's that or get on a plane to New York.
Thank you, ma'am. I've nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, counsel. Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do you want the floppy paper?
I will take that.
Take the paper.
Okay. So it is my understanding that we're going to take 5 minutes before we hear the second set of witnesses.
Unless I'm mistaken, I don't believe there's a recess.
So
Okay.
we don't have to take one, but if
you
like to
really
continue.
want to, we can.
Okay, and that sounds good. So we'll move on to the second set of witnesses, starting with the plaintiff. You may call your next witness.
At this time, the plaintiff calls Mr. Emery Everhart to the stand.
Okay, Mr. Everard. May take the stand. Counsel, you may proceed whenever you're ready.
Good morning. Could you introduce yourself to the court?
Good morning. My name's Emery Everett.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I'm a firearms investigator and consultant. I work with my consulting firm, Addy and Whitney Consulting. I've been doing this for quite some time, and basically my job is to look at incidences involving firearms and analyze whether something could have been done to prevent that particular issue, and focusing on handling and maintenance.
What qualifications do you have?
Well, particularly, I have a Bachelor's of Science from the University of Georgia, and I have a Master's, that Bachelor of Science is in Criminal Justice, and my Master's is from Georgia University. Particularly, I've also taken a bit of an unconventional path for a consultant in which I've actually certified in firearms with my time at the force. 6 months of intensive training on firearm safety and usage. And there's always every year a 2-week course on firearm safety for the 8 years that I was on the force.
And how did you make the shift from the force to investigation?
Unfortunately, it's a bit difficult to talk about, but I lost my brother in a firearm incident. I made the decision at that point to open up my consulting firm. I didn't want any other family to go through what I had.
And how are you involved in today's case?
Well, I was retained by the plaintiff in order to analyze various information regarding the incident happening on July 14th, 2023, involving the death of Mr. Maximilian at Lambert Family Park. Particularly, I looked at the maintenance and handling of firearms in that particular incident.
And can you explain to the members of the jury the bullet catch trick?
Well, of course, the trick that ultimately ended Max's life was the bullet catch. It involves 2 performers, one with a gun, and the other standing a certain amount of feet away. The performer loads the gun with a blank bullet, shoots it towards the other performer, and the other one mimes catching the bullet in the mouth. Now, when the blank is shot off, it still has that flash and sound, but no bullet in the chamber.
Thank you. And what material did you review in coming to your conclusions today?
Well, particularly, I reviewed the affidavits of 2 witnesses, Mr. Angel Ashmore, the individual responsible for the maintenance of the firearm, and Ms. Gabby Gray, the magician's assistant. I particularly focused on the issues of maintenance in 2 particular areas. A lack of due diligence when acquiring the particular gun, and a lack of proper maintenance and cleaning. I also relied heavily on my pre-existing knowledge of firearms and firearm safety.
Let's start with the first one, lack of due diligence. What do you mean by that?
Well, in a case like this, when a firearm is bought secondhand, as Mr. Ashmore stated in his affidavit, it's important to do some research into the prior usage. My review of Mr. Ashmore's statement was that he made no such effort. In fact, the gun club disclosed to him that the particular gun he bought, well, it was getting ready to be decommissioned.
What does it mean to be decommissioned?
Well, essentially, decommissioning a gun means it's no longer going to be in rotation. And from my review, Mr. Ashmore made no particular effort to figure out why that gun was being decommissioned.
How exactly does a gun work?
Well, it's important to know exactly how a gun works in order to discuss that second point, a lack of cleaning. So essentially, when you're firing off a gun, there's an explosion within it due to the gunpowder. That's essentially how the bullet actually leaves the barrel. So it's hurtling at high speed due to the force of that actual explosion.
And what does it mean to fire a blank?
Well, a blank essentially functions in the same way as firing a real bullet, but there's no actual bullet. There's still that gunpowder, that force, and theoretically, there's nothing in that chamber to actually be shot out as a projectile.
Why do you say just theoretic?
Actually, I have a little demonstration to illustrate the point I make.
Please, Your Honor, may this witness step down to perform a brief demonstration?
Sure. Any objections at this time?
No objections to the demonstration, Your Honor.
Okay. at all?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, what would correctly firing a blank look like?
Now, I know this is some pretty high-tech stuff, so follow me. Imagine this is the barrel of a gun. I didn't think Your Honor would appreciate me bringing in a gun. And imagine that my breath here is that pressure and force of gunpowder. Like I mentioned before, a blank doesn't have an actual bullet and doesn't have an actual projectile. So when there's that force of gunpowder, nothing comes out. But if you have some kind of debris or another issue, that's an entirely different story.
Why would there be something else in that?
Well, essentially, a gun has to be maintained like any other kind of instrument that has high level use. So you need to be cleaning that barrel. Things like dust and dirt and debris, it can get caught up in that chamber and act as a projectile itself. There's another issue when firing guns with bullets and blanks themselves. It's called metal fouling. That happens when you shoot bullets out of a gun. It leaves metallic residue that can also be shot up as a projectile, like dirt and dust can. So without proper maintenance, projectiles can still end up in a blank bullet. Now pretend these shredded pieces of paper are metal filings. Now when I shoot off that gun with the metal filings, I know it's a bit dinky here, but imagine those paper shreds hurtling hundreds of miles per hour at a performer. They can be just as deadly as a bullet.
Thank you, Mr. Everhart. You can take your seat now. I'll clean that up later. Don't worry about
Thank you.
it. Now, in your review, did you find any evidence that debris could have gotten into the barrel of that gun?
Yeah, in my review of Mr. Ashmore's statement and Mr. Gray's statement, Ms. Gray's statement, there wasn't a lot of discussion of actual cleaning of the gun. Ms. Gray actually made a point to mention that the prop tent in which the gun was stored, it was filled. It was filled with dust and debris, which could have ended up in the barrel of that gun, especially associated with that lack of cleaning I mentioned.
Earlier, you mentioned that metal debris can get in when real bullets are used. Did you find any evidence of that?
Well, on my review of those particular two affidavits, I didn't find any evidence of real bullets being shot from the gun. However, Mr. Ashmore stated that real bullets were bought alongside the blanks. If a witness were to testify as to, information about individuals actually firing off bullets from that gun, well, that'd be a cardinal violation of firearm safety.
Objection, Your Honor, to speculation. This witness just said if a witness were to testify to some facts, he's speculating as to what witnesses might be testifying to. As a sequestered witness, he is speculating at this time.
All right, I understand the objection. Response?
Yes, Your Honor. This witness testified that if somebody were to confirm that actual bullets were being used, that would be a violation of cardinal safety firearm rules. That's not speculation. This witness is simply proposing a conditional argument, and this witness is an expert, so he can testify to hypotheticals. He can testify that if bullets were used, that would be dangerous. He's not speculating that, yes, a witness can testify to that, or a witness cannot testify to that, but that if it did happen, that would be a violation of safety rules.
Yeah, I agree. I think expert witnesses are permitted to testify to hypotheticals based on a specific set of facts. And I think that's more akin to what we have here than the expert opining on the credibility of another witness. I think he's simply stating an if then, if there were live ammo fired, then that would break a rule of firearm safety. You don't need to opine on the witness's credibility to make that opinion. So unless you have any other objections, it's okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Now, what were you saying about the rules of firearm safety?
Well, if someone were able to say that they were shooting off bullets from that gun, that'd be a violation of cardinal safety rules with firearms.
Thank you. Now, I want to discuss one other point. You said you reviewed Angel Ashmore. Did you take any particular issues with the coordination of the armor and the performers in this case?
Yes, I did. In my review of Mr. Ashmore's affidavit, there was no real coordination between Mr. Ashmore and the actual performers. I'll admit there was discussion of the bullet catch trick, but there was never any performances in which dangerous behavior could have been rectified. We know in this case that a cardinal rule was broken. Ms. Gabby Gray pointed that gun directly at Maximilian. Now that's a violation of firearm safety. And if Mr. Ashmore were present at a practice or something like that, he could have rectified that behavior. As armor, he was responsible for things like that.
And what was your ultimate conclusion in today's case?
Well, my ultimate conclusion is that LFC and the armor didn't properly maintain or handle the firearm in today's case. And if proper precautions were taken, things were rectified, Mr. Maximilian might not have died.
Thank you, Mr. Everhart. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you so much, counsel.
Sorry again about that.
Yeah, you have to bring like a room, but.
I'll remember that for next time.
All right, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Mr. Everhart.
Good afternoon.
My name is Ronnie Kane, and I have some questions for you on behalf of the Lampert family.
It's nice to meet you, Ms. Kane.
Nice to meet you too. Now, you said that you believe firearm safety should be accessible to everyone.
That's correct. You know, it's a fact of daily life that firearms are used, so people should be educated.
But you didn't take on this case pro bono.
No, I did not.
These attorneys, they've already paid you $12,000 for your work on this case.
That's correct. It's a little bit lower than usual.
I'm not asking about the rates, I'm asking what you were paid. You were paid $12,000 for your work on this case.
Right, like I said, a little bit lower than my regular rate, but pays the bills.
And you just made another $5,000 for the 9 minutes you spent on the stand.
I did.
So let's talk about what you found in this case. You said you concluded the firearm might have been improperly maintained.
That's correct. I found that there was a possibility of debris ended up in that barrel.
Well, we'll take that little by little. Well, let's start with talking about the debris on the outside. Now, you made your conclusion about the improper maintenance without ever seeing the physical firearm.
No, the firearm was actually lost. Mr. Ashmore admitted that he wasn't able to recover it as his duty as armor.
So that's a yes, you weren't able to see the physical firearm.
Right, due to Mr. Ashmore's inability to produce it.
You weren't able to test it.
No, I wasn't, which is an issue I have with this case.
But you'd agree that if a firearm were improperly maintained, there should be clear signs.
That's correct.
There might be damage to the exterior.
Right, scratches and the like.
There might be dirt all over the outside of the gun.
That's correct, but again, my concern was dirt getting into the barrel of that gun. Dirt on the outside, that may be an issue, but in the barrel, well, that's a whole different story.
Now, I promise we'll get to what's in the barrel, but right now I'm talking about what's outside it. There might be dirt outside it if it was improperly maintained, like you said.
That's a possibility.
Like you said, you reviewed a number of witness statements for this case.
That's correct. The statement of Mr. Ashmore and Ms. Gray.
Both of those people, they handled the gun regularly.
That's correct. Although Ms. Gray, she didn't handle that gun quite regularly.
She practiced with it for 11 days.
She didn't practice with the gun in today's case for 11 days. That's not true.
Is it your testimony that she did not get that gun on July 3rd to practice?
Yes, she did, but without projectiles.
Right, I'm just asking about the weapon, not projectiles. She had the physical gun for 11 days.
Oh, right, that's correct. There were no projectiles to use that gun, so the practice just involved going through the motion.
And both the people who saw that gun regularly neither reported any external damage.
Not in particular, no. Although in my review, Ms. Gray did state that there were scratches and some wear and tear on the outside of the gun.
But she didn't say there was any damage.
She didn't say there was damage as to, loading up bullets or anything like that.
She didn't say it was covered in dirt.
She did not.
And now you keep talking about the inside of the barrel, right?
That's correct. It can be an issue.
You said there might have been debris from some previous gunshots, from bullets.
That's possible.
But to be clear, you reviewed a number of documents for this case.
That's correct.
And you didn't find one piece of evidence that a bullet was ever loaded into that gun.
I didn't find that. However, I knew that bullets were on the premises.
Well, you, a firearm expert, you looked at this case and you said, I am skeptical that there was ever a bullet in that gun.
Yes, I'm skeptical that a bullet was shot out of that gun on the day in question.
We are skeptical that a bullet was ever loaded into that gun. Isn't that right?
Right, in my review, I didn't see anything like that.
These plaintiffs, they didn't give you the statements of any witnesses who saw a bullet being loaded into that gun.
Not in particular, no. No one else that I knew of was handling the gun.
But the witness statement you did review, the armorer, she cleaned that gun right before Mr. Maximilian went on stage.
Right, she cleaned that gun once after she had already practiced firing some blanks.
That's right, she practiced with the blanks. She pulled out the gun, she cleaned it.
That's not really true. She cleaned the gun, loaded the blanks, fired them off, and didn't clean the gun after.
So she did clean the gun before Mr. Maximilian's performance, yes or no?
Right, but she immediately started firing blanks out of it after. There was no cleaning in between those shots and the actual performance.
But that's a yes to my question that the gun was cleaned on the day in question.
At some point, correct.
So you found that that gun was maintained before it was handed to Mr. Maximilian.
Once, correct. It was maintained once.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Everhart. But you'd agree that even a properly functioning gun, that can still be dangerous for performers, right?
That's correct.
That's why when you're preparing to use a gun, you don't just get to show up and start shooting.
That's correct.
A magician, they have to be trained on how to use their weapon.
Of course, that's important.
They have to be warned of any risks.
That's right. The armorer needs to warn the performer about any potential damage or risks.
Well, in this case, you found that Mr. Maximilian, the performer, he took gun safety classes.
That's correct.
You found that he had done the bullet catch trick 7 times before.
That's correct.
He'd practiced it dozens more times.
That's also correct. Although I will note in this case, he wasn't able to practice with that actual gun, firing off actual blanks from it until the day it happened.
But directing you back to my question, he had previously practiced that trick dozens of times.
That's correct.
So you concluded he had prior knowledge on how to perform it properly.
That's correct.
Objection, speculation, if I may.
Sure.
Opposing counsel just asked this witness if Max had prior knowledge to perform it properly. That requires this witness to enter the mindset of Max and testify to his knowledge. Although opposing counsel asked him questions about firearm safety courses and doing it before, that's not enough for this witness to definitively say if he had the proper knowledge on how to perform it correctly, which is the term she used.
Okay, I understand your objection response.
Yes, Your Honor. Now I just asked this witness whether he had taken firearm safety courses, whether he had performed it properly in the past. This witness said yes to both of those things. In fact, Your Honor, it's a conclusion in this witness's report that Mr. Maximilian did have prior knowledge. If opposing counsel believes that he can't speculate to that, she shouldn't have let him write it in his report verbatim.
Okay, so the objection is overruled given the prior testimony to the 2 questions prior, we'll say it goes to weight as opposed to admissibility.
Yes, Your Honor. So, Mr. Everhart, you concluded that Mr. Maximilian had prior knowledge on how to do that trick properly.
That's correct.
Like you said, on July 14th, that trick wasn't performed properly, was it?
It was not, no.
Because like you said, it is the #1 rule of gun safety that no one should ever point a gun at another person.
That's correct.
And you reviewed the statement of the magician's assistant in this case.
That is correct.
And to make the trick look convincing, she and Mr. Maximilian, they decided that she would point the gun at him.
Right, which is why I was so concerned that Mr. Ashmore didn't consult with the performers. Mr. Ashmore could have taken time to correct this incorrect behavior. It was really concerning to me that discussion, it never happened.
I'm not asking about what the armorer could have done. I'm asking about what the performers chose to do. And they chose to point the gun right at Mr. Maximilian.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Everhart. Your Honor, no further questions.
All right, thank you, counsel. Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Everhart. You may step down.
Thank you kindly, Your Honor.
Okay, defense, any witnesses to call or evidence to present?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Professor Tempest Trapp to the stand.
Okay, Professor Trapp,
Yes, Your Honor.
may take the stand. Counsel, you may proceed when you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning. Can you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Good morning. My name is Tempest Trent.
What do you do for a living?
I work as a professor at the University of Exeter, over in the United Kingdom. And in my spare time, I also work as a sort of creative director consultant for magicians. So that means I do all of the planning, but none of the performing. So trick selection, stage design, lighting. I mean, you give me a trick, a venue, I tell you how to pull it.
Why are you in the courtroom instead of the classroom today, Professor?
I was hired by the Defense Counsel to review a magic trick performed at the Lampert Family Carnival last summer. The one that resulted in the death of one of the magicians, Mr. Maximilian.
Before we talk about your conclusions, let's talk about your qualifications. How does someone become an expert in magic?
Well, I know it's not for everyone, but I fell in love with magic when my parents took me to the county fair when I was 7 years old and I saw street magic for the first time. I tried my hand at performing, but people didn't like it when I pulled quarters out of their noses instead of their ears, so I switched to more of a design aspect rather than performing.
Can you get a degree in magic performance?
Not quite, but I got close. I got my bachelor's from Emory in history with a specific focus on the history of illusion magic. So that taught me about different magic tricks that have been performed over the years. And then I got my master's degree from Case Western Reserve University in anthropology. And I wrote my thesis, Making Magic, the Logistics and Safety Measures Behind Modern Day Magic Acts. I take both of those combined and that's how you become a magic expert in this game.
Well, let's talk about how you were a magic expert in this case. When doing your analysis, did you have sufficient facts and materials?
I did. I reviewed the statement of 2 witnesses who were involved in the trick, as well as a number of other documents, and that was more than enough for me to come to my conclusions.
Did you apply any particular method?
I did. I performed what's called a HAZOP study. That's hazards and operability. It's a fairly common safety analysis technique. Basically, what I do is look for hazards, any risks that come along with the trick, and I look at operability. So procedures put in place by a carnival or a magician to mitigate those risks.
Let's talk about what you found when you did all that. Now let's start from the beginning. What kind of magic trick was performed in this case?
That was a magic trick known as the bullet catch. It's a fairly common trick that's been performed for hundreds of years.
How does it work?
Honestly, it would be a little bit easier if I could just show everyone visually. So, Ms. Kane, did you bring that flashlight like I asked?
I got it right there for you, Professor.
Perfect.
Your Honor, permission for Professor Trapp to join me in the well and demonstrate the bullet catch?
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. You may proceed.
All right, Professor? Now that we're here, how's the bullet catch work?
The bullet catch trick requires 2 performers, a magician and her assistant. In this case, Ms. Kane, you're going to be the magician. Is that all right?
That sounds good.
All right, if you could just take a if you could just stand right there for me.
Sure.
So basically what happens is the magician stands on one side of the stage and the magician's assistant heads to the other. Now what the audience sees is that the 2 performers get in an argument. The magician's assistant pulls out a gun, fires it quickly, and then the magician pulls out the bullet from his mouth. But the trick is that no bullet was actually ever fired. The magician had the bullet in his mouth the entire time, and the gun was only ever loaded with bullets.
So if you aren't firing any bullets at me, does that mean I'm completely safe?
No. When performing with a live firearm on stage, there is always a chance that something can go wrong.
Is there anything that the performers can do to make that dangerous trick less risky?
Of course. Magicians should know their act better than anyone else. Proper research is very important so that magicians are aware of any risks that come along with their trick and any procedures they can put in place to mitigate those dangers.
Well, what kind of techniques might you suggest in this trick to make it less risky?
An easy thing to change is always the angles of the performance. To show this, Miss Kane, can you stand against that whiteboard?
Sure.
And Miss Mancini, can you help me with the lights there? So we're going to be using this flashlight to demonstrate. As you can see, the center of the flashlight is the brightest. We're going to be using that to show the angle that a gun is pointed at and where any debris or projectile might end up if the gun is fired. So if I point the gun at you, Miss Kane, but I'm actually not pointing to you, it won't hit you. But to the audience, it still looks like the gun is pointed directly at the performer. Changing an angle like that can save a person's life. Ms. Mancini, you can turn those lights back on.
Thank you, Professor Trapp. You can take your seat.
Based on that demonstration, what's the magician's role in performance safety?
Magicians should always be aware of what they're doing and make sure that they're taking precautions to ensure their own safety and the safety of their assistants and other performers.
In this case, did you find that the performers took any of those kind of staging precautions when they performed it?
I reviewed the statement of the magician's assistant and I found that her and Mr. Maximilian made the choice to point the gun directly at them during that performance.
Well, now that we've talked about the performers' conduct, let's talk about the carnivals. What did you review when you reviewed their procedures?
I reviewed the statements of the armorer in this case, the person taking care of the gun for the carnival. And I found that she was generally aware of best practices and she took proper procedure to mitigate some dangers.
Was anyone else besides that armorer in charge of cleaning the weapon?
Well, Mr. Ashmore was the only person hired by the carnival to maintain that gun. But I always tell the magicians I work with that they need to take an active role when it comes to their performance. They need to make sure they're comfortable with the weapons they're performing with. They know how it works, and that they're aware of the gun and how it can be used.
You said the carnival took precautions. What were those?
I found that the armorer was cleaning the gun and that she checked the ammunition multiple times to make sure that blanks were loaded in and not bullets.
Why else could those precautions be important?
Well, the most likely cause of an injury in a case like this is a malfunctioning gun. Cleaning the gun regularly helps mitigate the probability that that happens. And another thing that can happen is the wrong ammunition being loaded in. By double checking the ammunition, you're preventing that as well.
So, Professor Trapp, based on everything you reviewed for this case, what was your final conclusion?
I believe that the bullet catch trick should have never been performed because the magician should have been aware of all of the dangers that come with it. And ultimately, we cannot conclude that it was the Lampert family carnival's conduct that resulted in Mr. Maximilian's death.
Thank you, Professor. Your Honor, I have no further questions for this witness.
All right, thank you, counsel. All right, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may proceed when you're ready, counsel.
Good morning. I want to start by talking about why you're here today. Now, you're being paid $750 an hour to testify,
That's right, I'm being compensated for my work.
and then you just got an extra $7,500 for the 9 minutes spent on stand.
That's right,
And you were retained by the defense here today.
yes.
And to be clear, if the defense is successful today, another company is going to hire you.
That's right. The field of magic experting isn't sort of something that has trial and error. I think it's some sort of proof of concept that what I do is actually valid.
Right, another company is going to hire you for 3 extra cases.
That's right.
And you really want to transition into the field of expert testimony.
That's right. I've had a great time with you all here today so far.
So the defense's success is crucial to your career.
It can be to show that what I do is actually valid.
It's not that it can be, it is crucial for the success of your career, yes.
Sure.
I want to talk a little bit about what you said on direct examination. You said that magicians should know the risks of the tricks they're performing, yes?
That's right. It's never safe to not know what you're getting yourself into.
Well, I want to talk about whether Mr. Maximilian did know the risks of what he's doing. Now, you reviewed 2 witness statements for today's case, right?
That's exactly right.
But you didn't interview Max.
Unfortunately, he had passed away by the time I conducted my review.
Right. You didn't interview Gabby.
No, I just read her statements.
You have no knowledge of whether Max conducted Google searches about the risks of this trick, right?
No, I'm just aware that he had performed it multiple times throughout his career.
So you have no personal knowledge of what risks Max was actually aware of.
Well, I'd hope that someone who performed the trick multiple times over years would know the risks of the performance they were doing.
I understand that you hope that, but I'm talking about what the case in fact is. And you have no personal knowledge of whether Max knew those risks that you articulated to us.
I can't tell you for certain, but he certainly should.
Well, let's talk about the maintenance of the gun. As you said, you reviewed Angel Ashmore, correct?
That's right. That was the armorer at the carnival.
And on direct examination, you said that the gun should be regularly cleaned.
Clean before performance. That's what happened in this case.
Well, I want to talk about that word, regular. There was no evidence of that.
She cleaned it right when she bought it, and then she cleaned it later on when she had the ammunition. It wasn't, I didn't find any evidence that it had been fired in between those times.
Angel Ashmore got the gun to the performers on July 3rd,
That's right,
and the trip took place on July 14th.
that's right. There was no ammunition or firing in between that time.
That's an 11-day period.
That's right.
Would you define cleaning the gun twice over 11 days as regular?
Yes, if it hadn't been fired, she cleaned it when she bought it, and she cleaned it before the performance. If there's no firing going on in the middle, you don't need to clean it every single time.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. Let me pose you a hypothetical. If that gun was fired in the middle and then it wasn't cleaned up, that would be an issue, wouldn't it?
Well, it would have been cleaned in the afterwards because she cleaned it on the day of the performance.
What if that gun wasn't cleaned after test fires? That would be an issue, right?
It could be, but you don't have to clean it before every single.
Well, Angel Ashmore didn't clean that gun after test firing it multiple times.
Oh, that's right, but when you perform with a gun, sometimes you have multiple shots on stage. You can't clean it in between every single performance. You should clean it regularly, often, but not every single shot.
Often, right? Because there can be buildup of debris.
That's right.
And before Max went on stage, immediately prior, it wasn't.
That's not exactly true. It had been cleaned, she test fired it, put it in its place.
Right, but you'd agree that the last thing the gun did was being shot.
That's right.
Now I want to talk about the role of the magician's knowledge. Now, in that flashlight demonstration, we illustrated that it's possible to shoot the gun to the side at an angle.
That's right. As I'm sure you saw in the news, a difference in an angle can be the difference between a fatality and just the grazing of an ear.
Exactly. And if someone were to have observed them doing the trick prior to that night, they might have been able to call that out.
That's right. But the magician should have known never to do that in the first place.
I understand what you think the magician should have known, but I'm going to focus on what they actually did. Now, Angel Ashmore never observed any test runs of this trick, right?
Not from my review.
The first time Angel Ashmore saw this trick performed was on stage on July 15th.
I believe Angel Ashmore wasn't actually watching the performance that day.
Right, Angel Ashmore actually never saw them perform this trick.
That's right. But when I read the magician assistant's affidavit, she said she knew it was dangerous, but that she didn't think it could be convincing otherwise.
Right, and she was the only armorer.
But which one?
She was the only armorer for LS.
Angel Ashmore or the assistant?
Angel Ashmore.
Yes, that's true.
And an armorer typically is the one who's supposed to inform magicians of risks.
They can be, but I believe the magician should take a more active role.
All right, but Angel Ashmore didn't inform the performers of any dangers.
No, the performers were already aware. The assistant stated verbatim that she knew that pointing a gun at someone was dangerous, but she chose to do it anyway.
Well, let's talk about the maintenance of the gun. Now, you yourself would admit there were mistakes made by Lampert Family Carnival in the maintenance of that gun, right?
That's exactly right. There's always ways to improve.
In fact, in Angel Ashmore's own sworn statement, they said that managing Max's props fell on the back.
Yes, but she never said that was specifically about the gun.
To be clear, one of Max's props used was the gun.
That's one of the props, yes.
Max's props management fell on the back burner at Lampert Family Carnival.
That's right. That's what the armorer said that she did.
Thank you. Nothing further on.
Right, thank you, counsel. Any redirect?
No redirect examination, Your Honor. I just asked that my witness might be excused.
All right, Professor Trapp, can you step down?
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and testimony. Okay, so I think have we heard all the evidence?
Both sides are resting at this time.
Okay, sounds great. We won't have any closing arguments, so we'll go ahead and wrap up.